Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Bart Corbin. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Barton Thomas Corbin was born on December 22, 1963, in Jacksonville, Florida. He went by the name Bart. His father was in the military, and his mother worked as a bank teller. Bart had two brothers. When Bart was 7 years old, his family moved to Snellville, Georgia, 32 miles east of Atlanta. In 1986, he graduated from college and attended medical school to study dentistry in Augusta, Georgia. In 1989, while he was in school, Bart met another dentistry student named Dolly Hearn, who went by the name Dolly. She was 1 year behind Bart and lived in an apartment with a roommate named Angela. Bart and Dolly became romantically involved, but the relationship was tumultuous. At first, Dolly was obsessed with Bart, but when he mentioned marriage, she ended their romantic relationship. After the breakup, Dolly became the victim of mysterious harassment. She reported a number of strange occurrences over the course of several months. For example, her apartment had been broken into and her vehicle had been vandalized. Dolly suspected the perpetrator was Bart, but she was not able to prove it. On June 6, 1990, at 5:15 p.m., Dolly's roommate, Angela, called 911 and reported that Dolly was dead on the living room couch. When the police arrived, they discovered that Angela's assessment of the situation was correct. Dolly was seated on her couch. She had a gunshot wound to the right side of her head. A Rossi .38 caliber revolver was near her right hand. This was a weapon that she routinely carried for protection from the unidentified offender who was harassing her. Investigators had a few reasons to suspect that Bart had killed Dolly. For example, he admitted that he had been in Dolly's apartment a few hours before her body was discovered, and none of Dolly's blood was on the revolver. Despite this, the police believed that Dolly had done this to herself, and nothing happened with the case. Bart moved on with his life. He graduated from dental school the same day that Dolly's obituary was published in the newspaper. For a while, Bart worked for other dentists. A few years after graduation, he opened his own practice in Lawrenceville. He had a lot of difficulties with anger, which interfered with his business. For example, he received an official reprimand after an incident in 1994. He flew into a rage and used an excessive quantity of expletives when working with a patient. 2 weeks later, he did the same thing with the same patient. She filed a complaint, which resulted in the reprimand. Despite this, Bart continued to practice as a dentist. In 1995, he met a woman named Jennifer. She worked in a bar as a waitress, even though she had a bachelor's degree. The couple became romantically involved, and they married on September 1, 1996. On March 12, 1997, Jennifer had a son named Dalton. On January 18, 1999, she had another son. His name was Dylan. A few days after Dylan was born, the family moved into a 3,200 square foot four-bedroom house on Bogan Gates Drive in Beaufort, Georgia. From an outside perspective, it seemed like Bart was successful and living an ideal life. He had a family, a large house, and should have been earning good money. The problem is, due to the mismanagement of his practice, Bart was in a terrible financial situation. In 2002, he transferred the house into his wife's name due to a fear of foreclosure. As Bart was struggling with money, Jennifer was struggling with their marriage. In the summer of 2004, she told her family members that she no longer possessed any emotion for Bart. Perhaps looking for some excitement and companionship, Jennifer started playing a video game called EverQuest. This is a massive multiplayer online role-playing game where players select an avatar. There are many different types of avatars available, for example, human, troll, barbarian, elf, and lizard person. Players then move through a medieval fantasy world, engaging in all types of adventures, like fighting dragons or searching for treasure. Not surprisingly, communication with other players is a key part of the game, and it can lead to the formation of real-life relationships. This is what happened to Jennifer. In September 2004, she started an online relationship with a married woman named Anita who lived in Missouri with her children. The problem is, Anita lied and said that she was a single man named Christopher. She was able to deceive Jennifer because they had never met in person. They didn't even speak on the telephone. All their communication was online. Jennifer believed that she was having a romance with a man, but the lover was actually a woman. The relationship soon adopted an intense sexual component as far as the communication. Jennifer seemed to be obsessed with various sexual activities, including those which required male genitals. The lovers repeatedly shared graphic and detailed descriptions about the passion they would unleash on each other when they met in person. They even added a sadomasochistic component. Anita probably realized that her absence of male equipment would have left her unable to fulfill many of Jennifer's fantasies. She wanted the relationship to continue, but understood that her deception would eventually be uncovered. Maybe if she told the truth early on, Jennifer wouldn't be as mad. With this in mind, Anita confessed to Jennifer that she was in fact a woman. Jennifer was upset, but after a short time contemplating the situation, she decided that she could be a lesbian. It didn't matter that Anita was a woman. Jennifer continued the relationship and adjusted her fantasies to match the more restricted range of genitals that would now be available. On Thanksgiving Day, in 2004, Bart found a sexually charged poem that Jennifer had printed out. This led to an argument. He was furious at Jennifer believing that she was engaging in self-service activity while at her computer. Allegedly, Bart punched Jennifer in the face. A few days later, on November 29, 2004, Bart filed for divorce. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On December 4, 2004, at about 7:30 a.m., Jennifer's sons found her dead in the master bedroom. Her son Dalton went to a neighbor's house across the street and said that his father shot his mother to death. The neighbor went over to the Corbin family house, found Jennifer dead, and called 911. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. 33-year-old Jennifer Corbin had died from a single gunshot wound to her head. The bullet entered her head behind her right ear. A Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver and divorce documents were found near her body. There was no gunshot residue or blood on her hands. The police determined that Jennifer had been on the phone with Anita until 12:30 a.m. After this, the lovers exchanged emails until 1:40 a.m. Sometime right after this, Jennifer was murdered. The police, of course, suspected that Bart was the killer and checked out his alibi. Bart had left the family house at 10 p.m. and met friends for a late dinner. He had receipts to prove this. After dinner, he took one friend home and drove to his brother's house where he spent the night. The problem with Bart's alibi is that there was enough time between dropping the friend off and arriving at the brother's house to commit the murder. One of Bart's neighbors heard his truck arrive at his house at about 1:45 a.m. and leave just before 2 a.m. So Bart may have been at his house right around the time Jennifer was shot to death. A few days later, a woman contacted the police and informed them that Jennifer's death may be connected to the death of Dolly Hearn. Again, Dolly was a former lover of Bart's who died under mysterious circumstances in 1990. Both cases involved a .38 caliber revolver and a single gunshot wound to the head. Even though there wasn't really any new evidence in Dolly's case, Bart was arrested and charged with Dolly's murder. 2 weeks later, he was also charged with Jennifer's murder. Bart pleaded not guilty and hired attorneys to represent him. His defense team argued that the deaths of Dolly and Jennifer were unrelated. There were a lot of problems in the state's case, and Bart was feeling confident enough to take the case to trial. This changed, however, when a man named Richard Wilson told the police that he supplied a revolver to Bart. This is the same revolver that was found near Jennifer's body. Richard explained how Bart told him he needed the gun for protection. The state granted Richard immunity in exchange for his testimony against Bart. Now Bart was not feeling as confident. He went from planning his life as a free man to being concerned about an execution. On September 15, 2006, under the terms of a plea bargain, Bart Corbin pleaded guilty to both murders. He was sentenced to 2 terms of life in prison to be served concurrently, eligible for parole in 14 years. At the time I'm making this video, Bart Corbin is still in prison. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Bart waived his right to appeal as part of his plea bargain, but it appears as though prison was not as much fun as he imagined. He attempted to appeal under an exception to his agreement, but was unsuccessful. Technically, Bart is already eligible to be released, but realistically, he probably won't be released until he is in his 70s, if he ever makes it out. Item number 2. Dolly's murder should have been solved many years earlier. It should not have taken Jennifer's death to move that case forward. The police failed to investigate Dolly's death properly. For example, they never interviewed a witness who said that Bart had told him he had argued with Dolly in her apartment on the day she died. Bart also told a friend that he carried out the perfect murder when he killed Dolly. Item number 3. When Bart was a child, he was overweight. As a result, he was teased by his classmates. In response, Bart started exercising and lost the weight. Eventually, he developed a severe anger problem. People said he would fly into a rage out of nowhere. It's not clear if this was connected to his weight and the bullying, but either way, this is what happened. Bart aggravated people with his narcissistic characteristics. He was arrogant, condescending, and believed he was superior to everyone. Item number 4. Jennifer Corbin knew that her husband had an anger problem and was concerned about him being violent. Even so, she allowed herself to become distracted by her affair. Her complete focus was on communicating with Anita about her intense sexual interests. The lovers exchanged almost 1,000 emails in 3 months. Having a long-term relationship with Anita was pretty unrealistic for Jennifer. Anita was married, had children, and lived in Missouri. Jennifer shared her husband's financial problems and only had a low-level part-time job. Even so, Jennifer was lost in the fantasy and not paying attention to the danger posed by Bart. This brings me to item number 5. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Bart Corbin was self-centered, impulsive, irresponsible, angry, violent, antagonistic, sadistic, vindictive, petty, immature, arrogant, insecure, vulnerable, condescending, haughty, cantankerous, manipulative, deceptive, cold, callous, overconfident, jealous, falsely believed he was special, and had a sense of entitlement. On top of all this, he was exceedingly creepy. Bart had a habit of flying into a rage. One of his triggers was being rejected by women. Bart had no problem terminating romantic relationships, but he wanted to be the one who executed the termination. When Dolly rejected Bart, he decided to make her pay. He probably was responsible for the harassment that Dolly reported, and this harassment was extensive. For example, Dolly told the police that someone broke into her apartment and put hairspray in her contact lens solution, took her mail, took her cat and let it go several miles away, poured paint in her gas tank, let air out of her tires, destroyed some of her patient charts at the school she attended, and took a set of teeth that she was working on as part of a final and required project. She needed the teeth for graduation. From Bart's perspective, this wasn't about being denied affection. Bart already had another lover by the time this harassment occurred. This was about revenge. Eventually, Bart's violent behavior escalated. He shot Dolly with a revolver she was known to possess and staged the scene to make it seem like Dolly was responsible. Due to a haphazard investigation, Bart escaped responsibility. This only made him more confident. He believed that he had committed the perfect murder. Years later, when Jennifer aggravated him by allegedly engaging in self-service activity, Bart decided to repeat what he believed to be a winning tactic. It never occurred to Bart that people would become suspicious, that 2 of his lovers, who just rejected him, died under the same suspicious circumstances 14 years apart. Those are my thoughts on the case of Bart Corbin. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. This is just a reminder that I have over 300 pre-release videos on Patreon. When I put videos in pre-release status on Patreon, they stay there for several months, if not a year. These videos are of the same quality as the videos that I make public. I will put the link to my Patreon account in the description for this video.